The Piaroa of the Orinoco, Guarime, and Roberto Gerard's Leo. This is the music we're going to discuss. Roberto Gerard's last two completed works are entitled with the zodiacal birth signs of himself and of his wife Poldi, Libra and Leo respectively. Each concludes with a version of the music we have just heard, which is from Leo. The strange beauty of the passage has been the subject of more than one comment. Joachim Olms wrote, "This unforgettably passionate yet serene ending is of an exceptional beauty and breadth of horizons." And some commentators have pointed out that the conception of both endings is related to that of certain primitive Oriental music. As Julian White has shown, Gerard was an inveterate borrower of musical ideas. But the borrowings in his previous works all come, as far as we know, from European sources. Olms' guess that this passage originates in an exotic music is correct, although it is not Oriental, but from the Guarime initiation ceremony of the Piaroa people, whose home is in the rainforests and mountains of the headwaters of the Orinoco in the border regions of Venezuela and Bolivia. And this paper, therefore, describes the original music, its context, and Gerard's adaptations to fit it for avant-garde concert works, after choosing it for the valedictory statements of Libra and Leo. The Guarime music was recorded in September 1949 by Pierre-Dominique Guessot during a Franco-Venezuelan expedition which took place between 1948 and 1950. He later became an eminent documentary filmmaker. The objectives of the expedition were to find a route over the Sierra Pirama from the Orinoco to the Amazon, and to study the customs of the local peoples whom they encountered. The recordings were made on 78 rep per minute wax discs using a portable recording machine, and they were issued in 1953 by the Musée de l'Homme as 33 rep per minute LPs. Gerard probably first encountered the music at one of his listening sessions with the zoologist and ethnomusicologist Lawrence Picken, who mentions two musics in his tribute to Gerard in the 60th birthday issue of The Score of September 1956. On many an evening we have listened together to a fragment of the elegant music of the Japanese imperial court, to the flute and bark trumpet music of the forests of the Orinoco. Japanese court music was Pickens' special interest, and his mentioning the warime music as the second example would clearly be the composer's choice, and it remained in his memory for more than 10 years before he decided to use it. The warime initiation ceremony is the most sacred event in the Piaroa calendar, and, including preparations, it takes a month to reach its climax. The rite is sacred, and so are the costumes, masks, and musical instruments used in the rituals, which during the year are concealed in the community shrine. Women are excluded from the sacred aspect of the ceremonies. They are forbidden to see either ceremonies or sacred objects, and should they encounter them, even if only in rehearsal, they must hide. Their role is limited to the production of a weak cassava beer for the whole month as refreshments for the entire village. The music is learned by the initiates during the preparatory month and is played by them as a processional and in the final rites. In noting the instruments, Gesso provided only descriptions in French, but no indigenous names. Probably because those are also sacred, and since the expedition consisted of people who were, in the eyes of the tribe, untrustworthy white men, they learned only the alien Spanish equivalents, which would probably be exempt from the stricture. 3 categories of instruments are used in the ceremony: trumpets, 1 reed instrument, and flutes. The first to be heard are the Grande Trompe d'Écorce on hockey, large bark trumpets, hocketing. These are made by coiling a long strip of bark into a necessary shape, with the mouthpiece inserted at the narrow end. The second trumpet is l'instrument double avec résonateur unique, a pair of small wooden trumpets. Each plays in hocket a different note into a ceramic bowl for amplification, the résonateur unique. The solitary reed instrument is l'enchant ruban, or ribbon reed. From its indistinct appearance in a photograph, this appears to be a sliver of leaf in a small clamp, played as children might play on a leaf or blade of grass, but more virtuosic. The third category of instrument is the flute, of which there are 2 types. A pair of flûtes à bloc are apparently beaked flutes with a block of wax forming the wind passage, also hocketing. The flûte à 3 trous, or flute with 3 finger holes, is played solo. The music begins with a series of ostinati created by the hocketing of a pair of large bark trumpets. The approximate pitches are D flat and C on the middle line and second space of the bass clef. The ostinati, with rhythmic changes, continue throughout the processional. In the background, a virtuosic performance on the ribbon reed can be faintly heard. After an extended period of ostinati, les flûtes à bloc enter with a haunting melody. After some repetitions, the melody fragments before being joined and then replaced by la flûte à 3 trous, with a set of fairly elaborate variations over the ostinati. The final entry is that of l'instrument double, which adds rhythmic complexity to the ostinati, as the several trumpets accompany the solo flute to the end. Gerard's borrowed material was often disguised, but in this case he merely reorchestrated and simplified the original warime music so that the 3/4 rhythm of the opening ostinato of the Bach trumpet becomes a duple quaver rhythm on the piano. The haunting melody for flûte à bloc is transferred to clarinet. A simpler version of the flute improvisation is given to the piccolo, and l'instrument double is, like the Bach trumpets, transferred to the piano, with the rhythm adapted to provide a more satisfactory closing passage. The most radical change is that l'enjambure seems to become the very different timpani and cello glissandi which run through the whole passage. A notable feature is that the pitches used by Gerard are, by and large, those of the original. Thus, the D-flat and C of the trumpet's ostinati is harmonized to produce a tone color rich in harmonics, and the clarinet and piccolo play in the same keys as the flûte à bloc and the flûte à trois trous. Lawrence Picon's reference to the Warime music in his birthday tribute clearly shows the strength of the impression which it made on Gerard, raising the question that if he found the passage sufficiently interesting to borrow it for 2 major works, why would he wait more than 10 years before he used it? The most likely explanation is that during the 1950s, while he was concentrating on developing his own distinctive 12-note method, he could find no use for it. And so it was 1968 before the Warime music first appeared as an integral part of Gerard's last 2 completed works. The reasons for the appearance of the music from the Orinoco at this juncture in works with such personal, if unstated, associations must, with the current state of Gerard research, be a matter for conjecture. But given that at this time he was suffering from the debilitating lung condition emphysema and had been barred by his doctor from attending any more concerts because of the potential strain on his heart, the motivation to look at the music again may have been prompted by 2 talks entitled The Voice of the Gods, given on the 3rd programme in March 1967 by A.L. Lloyd, the English folk singer and song collector, who was also an occasional producer of Gerard's talks on Spanish music on the BBC, and whose translation of Garcia Lorca's Lament for the Death of a Bullfighter was set for voice and electronic tape by Gerard. Lloyd's thesis was that the sacred voice is not the same as the secular voice, and it leads him to offer the idea that whatever their religion, when holy men communicate with their gods, they assume artificial voices designed specifically to contact the divine and to impress fellow worshippers who, in certain sects, are themselves encouraged to use them in the appropriate rituals. He develops the idea and discusses similar practices in other religions, such as the Buddhist use of the mantra Om to induce a state of meditation. From this he extrapolates that it was probably for this purpose that the giant trumpets were invented that we find in so many quarters of the globe, and he includes the Bach trumpets of the Orinoco Amazon basin in these. In the first talk, the Warime music is preceded by his citing the dervishes' whirling dance, in which the participants' breathing intensifies until it recalls a man at the point of death. The Warime music follows immediately and concludes the talk. Assuming that Gerard did listen to Lloyd's talks, his observations about giant trumpets, the emphasis on extreme breathing techniques suggesting someone on the point of death, and the fact that the Warime is the conclusion of the first talk must have struck a chord with a man suffering from emphysema and living with the knowledge that his life was nearing its end. And even though the music is from an initiation ceremony, a beginning, not an end, its undoubted solemnity, at least to Western ideas, could have led Gerard to appreciate its emotional potential. But the calm way in which Gerard had dealt with the many tribulations of his life and ultimately faced the death may explain his generally pragmatic attitude. And he did use texts which confront the prospect of death, such as that of La Muerte y la Doncella from Cantares, or those for the plague, or lament for the death of a bullfighter, works by a man aware of the meaning of death. Lloyd's broadcasts, with their dramatic emphasis on the final breath, could well have prompted him to revisit the Warime music and integrate it into Libre and Leo, where it becomes the farewell statement of two works named for himself and his wife at a time when he was conscious of his own imminent death. But although using this particular borrowing in Libre and Leo was a final demonstration of his eclecticism, the reasons for choosing this exotic music must, for the moment, remain with Roberto and Poldi.